The season for high-frequency alpha rut symptoms had returned with a vengeance, descending upon the city like a humid, heavy blanket. The hospital was absolute chaos, packed to the rafters with patients. More than half of the admissions were alphas who had succumbed to the biological imperative, desperate for injections of synthetic omega pheromones to quell the raging storms in their blood. I had been running around like a headless chicken for 12 hours straight, my mind a blur of charts, dosages, and the acrid, metallic tang of distress pheromones that seemed to cling to the very walls of the ward. Finally, the clock ticked past the end of my shift. I peeled off my white coat with a heavy sigh, the fabric feeling like it weighed 100 pounds. I moved to the sink, pumping a generous amount of antiseptic soap into my palms, scrubbing my hands with a ritualistic intensity as if I could wash away the exhaustion along with the germs. I was just grabbing my keys, ready to escape the sterile prison of my office, when my phone buzzed against the mahogany desk. The screen flashed a familiar name, Eugene. I swiped the screen to answer, bringing the device to my ear. Eugene, I said, cradling the phone between my shoulder and ear as I gathered my things. Ronald, Eugene's voice came through the speaker. Are you off work yet? I paused. His voice was usually a cool, textured baritone, composed, detached, and utterly in control. But right now, it carried a strange, cotton-soft tremor, a nasal quality that sounded suspiciously like he was holding back tears. A sinking feeling settled in the pit of my stomach. I had a guess, and unfortunately, I was rarely wrong about these things. I think, he hesitated, a ragged breath hitching in his throat. I think I'm showing symptoms of a rut. It sounded serious. The usual composure was completely fractured. I understand, I said, my voice dropping into professional alertness. I'm coming over right now. I immediately doubled back into the office, unlocking the secure cabinet. I grabbed several vials of synthetic omega pheromones and a handful of sterile syringes, shoving them into my leather medical bag. I didn't wait for the elevator. I took the stairs 2 at a time and sprinted to my car, driving toward Eugene's apartment with a sense of urgency that bordered on panic. When Eugene opened the door, my heart clenched. His eyes were rimmed with red, his nose flushed a delicate pink. It was obvious he had been crying, recently, perhaps even seconds before he turned the handle. I had never seen Eugene like this. He was usually a pillar of strength, a prime alpha who radiated authority. Now his eyes were swimming with a pathetic, desperate need for comfort. Ronald. Oh God, he whimpered. Tears, accompanied by a thick, congested sob, rolled down his cheeks like broken pearls. Uncontrollable weeping was one of the primary clinical symptoms of an alpha entering a severe rut, caused by the overwhelming surge of hormones crashing against their emotional regulation. I knew the science, but seeing it was different. I stared at Eugene's long eyelashes, clumped together with moisture, and for a moment, I was simply stunned. I had always known Eugene was handsome. He possessed a kind of sharp, devastating beauty. But never had I felt it impact me quite like this, a physical blow to the chest. The vulnerability made him dangerously captivating. Don't cry. Hey, don't cry. I stammered, feeling completely out of my depth. I didn't know what I was saying. Logically, I knew that in this physiological state, words of comfort were meaningless against a chemical tidal wave. Yet, pity and a strange, protective instinct surged within me. I adopted a coaxing tone, the kind one uses for a frightened child, while my hands fumbled clumsily in my pockets. I managed to fish out a packet of tissues. I'm here now, aren't I? I said softly. I'm sorry, Eugene choked out, taking the tissue with trembling fingers and dabbing at his eyes. Watching him like this, I felt a profound sense of frustration on his behalf. Eugene was a man of principle and immense grace. Despite being an alpha, he never used his biological advantages to hunt or intimidate omegas. He firmly believed that human beings should not be slaves to their pheromones. He believed that alphas, who were physically stronger than the other two genders, had a moral obligation to exercise greater restraint. But biology was cruel. He had entered his rut, and all that discipline was crumbling. In many ways, an alpha's rut was far more aggressive and debilitating than an omega's heat. An omega's cycle was predictable, manageable with patches or suppressants. But the alpha rut syndrome was caused by a viral trigger, unpredictable as the flu. You never knew when or where it would strike, and for severe reactions, over-the-counter suppressants were useless. It always caught you off guard. As far as I knew, this was Eugene's first time being infected. He was usually so careful. Seeing someone as aloof and dignified as Eugene reduced to weeping and showing weakness was jarring. I reached out, my hand hovering for a second before I placed it on his forehead. It was burning. "You're burning up," I murmured, worried that he might need a physical cooling measure before I could administer the drugs. Before I could pull away, he tilted his head, burying his face into my palm. He rubbed his cheek against my skin, letting out a soft sigh. My hand must have felt cool against his feverish skin. I froze, a wave of awkwardness washing over me. Yes, we had known each other for years. We were best friends. But our physical interactions had never been this intimate. He was leaning in too close. I could feel the radiant heat of his body, the tension in his muscles. I tried to gently retract my hand and step back, creating professional distance. But the moment I lessened the pressure, Eugene chased the touch. He reached out and grabbed my wrist, his eyes wide and glistening with a wet, pleading desperation. "Don't," he whispered. Good Lord, how was I supposed to handle this? My resolve crumbled instantly. I softened my voice again. Okay. I'm not leaving. I'm going to set up and for you. You'll feel better soon, all right." Eugene nodded, looking at me with an expression that could only be described as pitiable. My heart took another violent hit. I guided him into the master bedroom. Eugene climbed into bed and pulled the duvet up to his chin while I opened my medical bag on the nightstand. I took out the synthetic pheromones, prepped the solution, and tied the tourniquet around his arm. I slid the needle into the vein on the back of his hand with practiced ease. "You can sleep for a while," I said, leaning over to tuck the corner of the blanket around his shoulder. "I'll be right outside watching. I won't leave until the drip is finished." "Okay," he breathed, his eyes fluttering shut. There was nothing to do but wait, so I let myself out of the bedroom and sat on the sofa in the living room, turning on the TV with the volume low. I knew Eugene's home better than my own. He had bought this place 2 years ago, and I had been there for every step of the process. I had accompanied him to buy almost every piece of furniture, every painting, every decorative vase. Eugene wasn't the type to obsess over interior design. His requirements were simple, bright, clean, tidy, and habitable. I was the one who argued that a home should be a sanctuary from the chaos of life, not just a box to sleep in. He had listened, nodding thoughtfully, and then proceeded to hand all the decisions over to me. He was a paradox. You could say he wasn't picky, yet in his work and demeanor, he was a perfectionist. But when it came to his living space, he had no demands. When we went shopping, he would often tell me to choose whatever I liked. We spent so many weekends wandering through furniture showrooms that the sales clerks often assumed we were a newlywed couple. They would smile beamingly and wish us 100 years of happiness. Eugene never corrected them. That was his dark, subtle humor at play. He was too lazy to deal with the sales pitch and too indifferent to correct the assumption, so he let me handle everything. After he officially moved in, I became a fixture here, constantly coming over to mooch meals. Years ago, Eugene's cooking was mediocre at best. But over time, he had honed his skills to the point where he could whip up restaurant-quality Western or Chinese dishes with ease. I hated cooking and had zero talent for it. My own meals were sad, functional affairs. Coming to Eugene's place was the only way my poor stomach got any respect. 30 minutes passed. I stood up and walked back to the bedroom to check his vitals. The moment I opened the door, I was slammed by a wall of aggressive alpha pheromones. It was suffocating. Even as a beta, biologically dull to these scents, the intensity was physical. The air was thick with the heavy, rich aroma of sandalwood. I frowned deeply. How was this possible? The synthetic pheromones I had administered should have neutralized this reaction by now. Instead, it was worse. Eugene was writhing on the bed. His face was slick with sweat and tears. His jaw was clenched tight, grinding his teeth, but small, pained whimpers still escaped his throat. He seemed to sense my presence and snapped his eyes open. I rushed to the bedside, placing a hand on his forehead. It was hotter than before. "How are you feeling?" "It hurts," Eugene groaned. His voice, warped by the rut, was incredibly soft, almost like a whine. "I don't understand," I muttered. "Let me check the medicine." I tried to pull away to inspect the empty vials in the living room, but Eugene's hand shot out and clamped around my wrist with bruising force. "Don't go," he begged, his tone laced with unconscious desperation. "Ronald, don't go." "I'm very uncomfortable," he rasped. "I'm not leaving," I reassured him, trying to pry his fingers loose gently. "I just need to check the concentration of the pheromones I gave you. There might be an issue." Hearing this, he reluctantly loosened his grip. I ran back to the living room and snatched the empty vial from the trash. I stared at the label, and my blood ran cold. Low concentration. I stood there, feeling like an idiot. Eugene was a prime alpha. His natural levels were off the charts. Low concentration synthetic pheromones were like throwing a cup of water on a forest fire. It did almost nothing. It must have been the interns. I had told them 1,000 times to organize the pheromones by concentration in the cabinet, but they had jumbled them together again. And in my rush to get to Eugene, I hadn't double-checked. I had grabbed the wrong box. There was no other choice. I had to go back to the hospital. I hurried back to the bedroom to explain. "Eugene, listen to me." I started as I reached the doorway, but the door was yanked open from the inside. I crashed straight into a solid, overheated chest. Eugene was standing there, radiating heat like a furnace. "Eugene, I took the wrong pheromones." I didn't finish the sentence. I felt a sudden, violent shove against my shoulders. I stumbled back, slamming hard against the doorframe. I braced for the pain in the back of my head, but it never came. Eugene's hand had darted out, cupping the back of my skull to protect me from the impact. Before I could process the contradiction of his violence and his gentleness, a shadow fell over my face. My eyes widened in shock. Eugene, my best friend of 10 years, was pressing his body tightly against mine, and he was kissing me. It wasn't a tentative kiss. It was chaotic, devoid of technique, but overwhelmingly domineering. His breath was scorching, and the pressure of his lips made me feel like my own mouth was catching fire. For a few seconds, my brain simply ceased to function. It was a blank white noise. Then, I felt his lips travel down my jawline, seeking the curve of my neck. Reality snapped back into focus. He was trying to bite my gland. Eugene was an alpha in a rut. This was pure instinct. He was seeking to mark an omega to soothe his biological distress. But I wasn't an omega. I was a beta. The gland on the back of my neck was vestigial, undeveloped. It was a decoration. I couldn't release the soothing pheromones he needed. If he bit me, it would just be a wound. A surge of indignation and panic rose in my chest. I struggled, pushing against his chest with all my strength. "Eugene, stop." I managed to shove him back a few inches. He stumbled, one hand bracing against the doorframe near my head, the other still wrapped tightly around my waist. He dropped his head, burying his forehead into my shoulder, gasping for air in ragged, harsh heaves. I knew he was suffering. I didn't push him away further. I stood there, rigid, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Eugene," I whispered, "can you let me go now?" He shuddered. Slowly, painfully, he took a step back, putting distance between us. "I'm sorry," he whispered. His voice was still broken and soft, his eyes filled with a terrified panic. He looked like he was afraid I was going to strike him. Tears welled up in his reddened eyes again, spilling over his cheeks. I sighed internally. How could I be angry at him when he looked like that? "I have to go back to the hospital to get the high-concentration synthesis," I said, keeping my voice steady and calm. "You wait here." "Okay." Eugene looked at me with a profound, lingering gaze, then nodded weakly. Good boy," I said. I swear, that was the first time in my life I had ever used such a coaxing tone with a grown man. "I'll be back very fast." I ran. I drove like a maniac, retrieved the correct dosage, and returned. The high-concentration pheromones worked quickly. Within 20 minutes of the injection, the frantic edge of his rut began to recede. When he finally fell into a stable, deep sleep, I packed my bag and left his house. In the days that followed, silence fell between us. Our WeChat conversation history ended on the morning after the incident. He had sent a message apologizing again. I had replied, "It's fine. The rut makes people lose control. Don't take it to heart." But Eugene didn't reply. And he didn't reach out again. He was probably embarrassed. Mortified, even. We had been friends for so long, and he had crossed a line that shouldn't be crossed. Knowing his personality, he was probably beating himself up far more than I was bothered by it. So, I didn't contact him either. I didn't want to accidentally trigger his memory of that night or make him feel obligated to explain. The weekend arrived, bringing with it a reunion dinner. The organizer was Charlie, an old teammate from my university debate squad. He had moved away for work after graduation, but was back in town for a business trip. He had rounded up everyone from the old team who still lived in the city. Eugene had been on the debate team too. In fact, he had been the captain. That was how we met. "Is Eugene coming?" I asked Charlie over the phone. "I haven't called the captain yet," Charlie admitted. "Ronald, you're the first person I called. It's been so long. You have to come." I went. Eugene did not. I didn't know if he was avoiding me or if he was genuinely busy, as Charlie claimed he had said on the phone. But the rest of the group didn't seem surprised. "Captain was never one for crowds," one of the old team members remarked, pouring tea. "Even back in school, he didn't really like hanging out." "Yeah," another agreed. "Even when he did come, he barely spoke. Remember at KTV? He never sang. He just sat there watching us act like idiots." Back then, only Ronald was close to him, right? Suddenly, half a dozen pairs of eyes swiveled toward me. I hesitated. "I guess. But I always felt he was nice to everyone. He wasn't as silent as you guys make him out to be." "Dude, he only talked when he was coaching us or prepping for a match," Charlie laughed. "That was strictly business. If you asked him about debate, he'd talk for hours. But try to get personal? Forget it. Honestly, I always wondered why someone like him joined the debate team in the first place. Maybe he used up his daily word quota on stage," someone joked. I sat there, feeling a strange sense of dislocation. Was that who Eugene was? Over the years, Eugene had become as essential to my life as air or water. I never felt he was distant. Had I forgotten what he was like to the rest of the world? I tried to think back. Meeting Eugene for the first time was striking. Nowadays, Eugene was always in a bespoke suit, radiating an elite, untouchable aura. But in university, he wore his hair longer than most guys, tied back in a low, messy bun at the nape of his neck. It softened his features, giving him a gender-neutral beauty that confused people. Many, including myself, thought he was an omega at first glance. But other than his exquisite face, he had nothing in common with the delicate stereotype of an omega. I remembered crossing a street with him back then. I was talking, not paying attention to the traffic light. A car ran the red light, speeding straight toward us. I only saw Eugene's expression shift, a flicker of steel. In the next nanosecond, an arm clamped around my waist like an iron bar. He lifted me, literally lifted me off the ground, and swung me backwards several feet onto the curb. I was lean, but I was a tall man. I wasn't light. But Eugene had moved me with one arm as if I were a rag doll. I remembered my heart pounding in my chest after he set me down. I didn't know if it was fear of the car or the sudden, overwhelming scent of him. It was the first time I smelled his pheromones. It wasn't faint. Usually, alphas kept their scent dialed down, suppressed. But in that moment of danger, his defense mechanism had triggered a flood of sandalwood. He had rubbed the back of his neck, apologizing, saying his scent patch must have failed because of the sweat. "Ronald?" Earth to Ronald. The voices at the dinner table pulled me back to the present. "Huh? What?" I blinked. "Nothing. We were just gossiping," Charlie grinned. "We were asking how you managed to thaw the iceberg. How did you and the famous high mountain flower actually become friends?" "Just added on WeChat." I shrugged, downplaying it. "Chatted sometimes. Ate together. Played basketball. You know, friend stuff." I remembered now. Eugene had added me after a debate match. I was new to the team. At first, it was just links to debate videos. Then, a message, asterisk, I heard the medical school cafeteria is good. Can you take me? Asterisk, he ate there once and apparently loved it, because he started showing up every other day to eat with me. Then he invited me to play basketball after seeing me play in an inter-department game. Sometimes, he'd bring a sketchbook to the court. When he got tired, he'd sit on the sidelines and draw. I never really saw what he was drawing. Whenever I walked over for water, he'd snap the sketchbook shut. Once, I joked, "You aren't drawing me, are you?" He had looked up, smiled that rare, small smile, and said, "Yes, I am." I thought he was joking, so I didn't ask again. Looking back, our friendship had built itself in those quiet, mundane moments. I never felt I was doing the heavy lifting. I never felt he was cold. You guys are exaggerating. I defended him to the table. Once you know him, he's actually very easy to get along with. The table groaned in unison. Yeah, key phrase. Once you know him. After dinner, the group decided to go to KTV. Charlie, fueled by liquid courage, called Eugene again. Captain, we're heading to sing. If you finish work, come by. We miss you. He hung up and shrugged. Working overtime. He said he'd try if we're still there later, but don't hold your breath. Nobody expected him to show. But at nearly midnight, the door to the KTV room pushed open. Eugene stood there in his suit, tie slightly askew. The room was dark, the disco lights swirling, but he cut a striking figure. The shifting shadows made his features look even more profound, more sculptured. I realized with a pang that I hadn't seen him in weeks. Sorry, he said, his voice cutting through the fading music. Work was impossible. I'm late. His eyes scanned the room and locked onto mine. He paused. No worries. Charlie shouted, jumping up. You made it. That calls for a drink. Absolutely. A penalty drink for the latecomer. The room erupted. Eugene was swarmed. He was dragged into the chaos, forced to down several glasses of whiskey by the rowdy debate veterans. Finally, he managed to extricate himself and sat down in the empty spot next to me. He leaned back into the sofa, loosening his tie further with a tired sigh. Did you skip dinner again? I asked. He turned to look at me. What? The music had started up again, some deafening pop song. I leaned in close, almost shouting into his ear. Did you skip dinner? I felt his body stiffen slightly at the proximity. He turned his head, our faces inches apart, and slowly shook his head. No dinner. I wasn't surprised. He always forgot to eat when he was busy. I scanned the messy table, found a fruit platter that was mostly untouched, and slid it toward him. Eat something. I gestured. He looked at the fruit with disinterest, but because I offered it, he picked up a slice of melon and ate it. I watched his jaw move, watched his lips. And suddenly, a vivid, tactile memory of the kiss flashed through my mind. Soft. Hot. I looked away sharply, staring intently at the screen, pretending to be engrossed in the lyrics. My heart was doing a traitorous gallop in my chest. I felt like a pervert, secretly lusting after my best friend. Ronald. A breath of warm air brushed my ear. I turned back. Eugene was leaning in, his eyes dark and shimmering in the low light, reflecting the screen's glow like deep pools. He was practically whispering into my ear now. I gulped, my throat dry. Did you drink? He asked. I shook my head. No. I was on call too often. I rarely drank. I'm the designated driver tonight. I drank, he murmured. I can't drive. Can you take me home? The warm air from his voice tickled my ear. I raised a hand to rub it, hiding my nervousness. Sure, I said. Eugene's eyes crinkled at the corners. He smiled. It was strange. Why did I keep thinking about that night? Why did I keep remembering the sound of his weeping, the look of longing in his eyes? I thought Eugene was the one who couldn't get over the awkwardness, but looking at him now, he seemed fine. I was the one freaking out. I poured myself a glass of water and downed it in one go. By the time the party broke up, Eugene was properly drunk. The mixture of wines and spirits the team had forced on him had done its work. I guided him to my car, buckling him into the passenger seat. As I was pulling back, his hand shot out and grabbed mine. His eyes, which had been closed, fluttered open. They were hazy, unfocused, but filled with a terrifying amount of affection. Ronald, he slurred softly. It's me, I said. He seemed to relax, releasing my hand and closing his eyes again. He slept the whole way. Or so I thought. When I parked in his underground garage and killed the engine, I turned to find him watching me. His head was tilted against the seat, his gaze lucid and heartbreakingly tender. I leaned in slightly. Are you okay? Not really, he whispered. If work is so busy, you should have gone home to sleep, I sighed. Why come out at midnight? Aren't you tired? Eugene lowered his lashes. We haven't seen each other in a long time. His tone was thick with grievance. You're the one who didn't contact me, I pointed out. If I don't contact you, you can't contact me, he countered, sounding even more wronged. I chuckled. What is this, kindergarten? You're drunk, Eugene. I am drunk, he admitted. Come on. Let's get you upstairs. I hauled him out of the car. He wasn't stumbling blindly, but he was heavy, leaning his weight against me as we navigated the elevator and the hallway. I unlocked his door, dumped him onto the sofa, and turned to get him some water. He caught my wrist. He pulled. I lost my balance and fell, landing squarely on top of him. "Ronald," he breathed, ignoring the fact that I was crushing him. He stared up at me, his eyes searching my face. "Are you still angry with me?" I struggled, trying to push myself up, but his arms were like steel bands around my waist. "I'm not angry. I was never angry. Let me up." He ignored the command. "I was so afraid you were angry. If you're angry, you won't talk to me. And if I think you don't want to talk to me, I don't dare look for you. But I miss you every day," he whispered, taking my hand and pressing it flat against his chest, right over his heart. "When I don't see you, my heart. Right here. It feels like it doesn't beat." Under my palm, his heart was racing, a frantic, thumping rhythm. The air around us began to thicken with the scent of sandalwood. "Eugene, you're drunk," I stammered, my voice trembling. "Yes, I'm drunk." He looked at me with a devastating honesty. "So I'm going to tell you a secret. Although I apologized for that kiss, I don't regret it." My breath hitched. "Please don't blame me for taking advantage of the rut," he said softly. I wanted you so much." "Eugene," I shouted, panic seizing my throat. "Stop. Let me go." The shout seemed to snap something in him. The light in his beautiful eyes dimmed, replaced by confusion and a crushing disappointment. His arms went slack. I scrambled off him instantly. I didn't look back. I ran for the door. Slam. The sound of the door closing behind me echoed like a gunshot. I stood in the hallway, shaking. I had never thought Eugene liked me. Not like that. He was an alpha. I was a beta. Alphas were biologically destined for omegas. Pheromones were the law of nature. My own parents were a beta couple. I assumed I would marry a female beta. An alpha falling for a beta? It was unheard of. It was wrong. Another month passed. This time, the silence was absolute. Eugene called. He texted. He said he wanted to talk. I ignored everything. I was a coward. I didn't want to lose his friendship, but I couldn't imagine being his lover. So I ran. Fortunately, the hospital was busy. Surgeries, rounds, patients. I drowned myself in work. One afternoon, I was typing up patient notes. I hit the button for the next number without looking up. "Name?" I asked, eyes on the screen. "Eugene." I froze. I looked up. Eugene was sitting in the patient chair. He looked tired. "Dr. Ronald," he said formally. I reverted to robot mode. "Where does it hurt? Did I have to get sick just to see you?" he asked, a bitter smile touching his lips. "If you aren't sick, don't waste medical resources," I snapped, looking back at the screen. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. "I am sick," he said quietly. "My pheromones are unstable. I feel hot constantly. I can't sleep. It's affecting my life." I typed, ignoring the twisting in my gut. I ran the tests. An hour later, the results were in his hand. "Your pheromone levels are dangerously high," I said, my voice clinical. "Eugene, this is serious. You should find an omega." I finally looked him in the eye. He stared back, stunned. "You are an adult alpha," I continued, forcing the words out. "If you don't bond with an omega, the pheromones will accumulate until you suffer a total collapse. There are physical consequences." "Is there no other way?" he asked. "Extraction surgery," I said. "But it's painful. And it's temporary. Why fight biology? Find an omega you like. Someone who likes you. It's the best solution." "You know who I like," he said. The room went silent. The printer whirred in the corner. "I'm a doctor," I said, handing him a referral slip for the extraction procedure. "This is my medical advice." He didn't take the paper for a long time. When he finally did, his expression had turned cold. "Okay, Dr. Ronald," he said. "I accept your advice." I didn't expect him to move on so fast. A week later, I saw him at the mall. I was picking up jewelry for my mother. I walked in and saw Eugene. He wasn't alone. A young man, an omega, was hanging off his arm. They looked intimate. Eugene saw me. He nodded, polite and distant. The omega, however, beamed. "Hi. You must be Ronald. Eugene told me about you." "I'm Lucas. Nice to meet you," I said, forcing a smile. Lucas was clinging to Eugene like a koala. "Thanks for taking care of our Eugene all these years." "Our Eugene?" I looked at Eugene. He looked annoyed, but he didn't push Lucas away. I made an excuse and fled. I drove home in a daze, forgetting my mother's jewelry. That night, I dreamed I was at Eugene's wedding. He was marrying someone faceless. He smiled at them, a smile full of love. He didn't look at me once. I woke up feeling hollow. The next day at work, the department chief walked in with a new hire. "Everyone, meet our new transfer, fresh from overseas," the chief announced. It was Lucas. "Surprise, Ronald." Lucas chirped. "We're colleagues now." My life had become a nightmare. Lucas stuck to me like glue. He was loud, chatty, and annoying. How did Eugene stand him? "Here, take this chicken leg," I said at lunch one day, shoving my food onto his tray just to shut him up about missing the special. "Ah, thanks, Ronald. You're so nice. No wonder Eugene likes you." I choked on my water. Cough. "What?" Lucas patted my back. "Don't worry. That's old news. He told me he doesn't like you anymore." "Thanks for the update," I deadpanned. "But hey," Lucas leaned in, eyes sparkling. "When I said that, did you feel sad?" "Just a little bit." He pinched his fingers together. "A tiny bit." "Why would I be sad?" I smiled, a fake, plastic smile. "My best friend found love. I'm happy for him." "Liar," Lucas whispered. "You look devastated. Anyway, if you like him, tell me. I can keep a secret." This kid was insane. Because of Lucas, I saw Eugene constantly. He came to pick Lucas up after work. One day my car was in the shop. I was walking to the subway. Eugene's car pulled up. "Get in," Eugene said. I got in the back. Lucas was in the front, chattering away. It was torture. "Does he talk this much with you?" I asked Eugene, trying to joke. "He never shuts up," Eugene said, glancing at me in the rearview mirror. "You just have to ignore him." The tone was fond. Domestic. I felt like I couldn't breathe. "Let me out here," I said suddenly. "Traffic is bad. I'll walk." "Ronald, we're still friends, right?" Eugene asked as I opened the door. Of course, I lied. I slammed the door and walked away, inhaling the smoggy city air like it was oxygen. I realized then, standing on the sidewalk, that I had lost him. A week later, the department had a welcome dinner for Lucas. We went for barbecue. I started drinking beer immediately. I wanted to numb the ache in my chest. Lucas was shouting across the table. "I'm telling you, I'm going to get DR. Holt. Just you wait." "Wait," I slurred, blinking. "DR. Holt? I thought you were with Eugene." The table went quiet. "Ronald, are you drunk?" a nurse asked. "Lucas has been chasing DR. Holt since day one. Everyone knows that." "But, Eugene," I muttered. My brain short-circuited. I drank more. The night went black. I woke up in a familiar room. Eugene's guest room. My head was pounding. I stumbled into the living room. Eugene was on the sofa, watching something on his phone, smiling. "Morning, Ronald," he said brightly. "Morning," I croaked. "I'm leaving." "Wait." A voice screamed. It was my voice, coming from the phone. I froze. "Eugene, what are you watching?" He turned the screen toward me. It was a video. I was hugging a telephone pole on the street. I was weeping. Asterisk, "Lucas, you animal. How could you take him? Eugene is the best person in the world. I want to fight DR. Holt. Bring him here." Asterisk on screen, I sobbed louder. Asterisk, "Eugene. How could you leave me? I think I like you. No, I love you. I haven't even started dating you, and I'm already dumped." Wah. Asterisk, Lucas's laughter could be heard behind the camera. The video ended. I stood there, wishing for a meteor to strike the building and kill me instantly. So, Eugene stood up, walking toward me. "You love me." I was drunk. I stammered, backing up. "Lucas isn't my boyfriend," Eugene said, stepping closer. "He's my cousin. You know, the annoying one who studied abroad." My jaw dropped. "The cousin? He knew you didn't return my feelings, so he suggested a fake relationship to see if you'd get jealous," Eugene explained. "I wanted to tell you, but you kept pushing me away. I'm sorry, Ronald. I shouldn't have played games." I felt tears prick my eyes again. "You idiot. I was miserable. I thought I lost you." "You could never lose me," he said softly. I looked at him. The fear vanished. The hesitation vanished. I stepped forward and wrapped my arms around him, burying my face in his neck. "I love you," I mumbled into his shirt. "I don't care about biology. If you married an Omega, I would have died." "I know," he whispered. "I know." He tilted my chin up. His lashes lowered, casting a shadow on his cheeks, and he kissed me. It was gentle, patient, and filled with 10 years of waiting. We were friends for a decade. Today, we became something more.